As a part of our faculty conversation series, the following conversation is between Josette Luvmour and Sam Crowell. Josette and Sam discuss and illuminate many topics, including human development, spiritual activism, and their insights into transformation. As a developmental consultant, educator, author, and public speaker, Josette specializes in the fields of human development, adult transformational learning, sustainable family relationships, and how adult and child grow together. She enjoys teaching educators at Antioch University and collaborating with the Transformative Learning Foundation. Together with her husband and collaborator, Ba Luvmour, Josette co-created and developed Natural Learning Relationships, a whole child understanding of child development that supports optimal well-being in children and families. Sam is a professor emeritus from California State University, where he received the Outstanding Teaching Award and founded the MA in Holistic and Integrative Education. He teaches courses for Earth Charter International and the Institute for Educational Studies. Sam is an Imagineer for a heart-centered, earth-affirming consciousness. His books include Mind Shifts, The Reenchantment of Learning, Emergent Teaching, and the International Handbook on Holistic Education. Sam's most recent, soon-to-be-published book is The Tao of Spiritual Development.
Hi, Sam. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. This is going to be fun having a chance to talk with you and get to know you better. My goodness, I'm excited about it.
I think we have a lot of convergent thinking, but we haven't really, spent a lot of time hashing it out together. But we were just talking a minute ago about starting with the understanding of transformation and how you had worked with Ba on that really closely to come up with a definition. I was wondering if you would say a little more about that.
Sure. Well, transformation for me is I've been kind of very interested in that over the years. And, I think I've had a little bit of an evolution in my understanding of transformation. I think I used to, if I could put this out there, I used to think, oh boy, go in and change the world. And in the process, change the students. And I started realizing, I'm not so sure about that. Listen to the way that sounds, how impositional it is. And I started to realize I'm not there to change people. I'm there to touch their lives and to try to create a trusting relationship in which we all can open ourselves to the processes of change and redefining and reimagining the world and ourselves within that world and our relationships with one another and the communities at large. So that's I started moving much more in that direction. And so the definition that we worked on was that transformation is a fundamental shift in perspective. And I think that's, for me, that was a very important part. It isn't just a change. It isn't just a movement from one thing to the next. It's embodied. It's part of our physiology and our thinking and our perception of the world. And that shift in perspective is like a new lens through which one views the world. We can never see the world the same way once we are truly transformed. That's my understanding. So these previously held patterns and frameworks are unlearned. We start to unlearn them. They don't go away because we've just spent too much time nurturing them. I'm afraid we're stuck. But when we start to that process of unlearning and engaging and reorganizing the meanings that inform who we are and the very substance of who we are, I think we change and the world changes with us. And so I guess it starts to relate to the purposes and directions of life itself.
I love that. It's very fluid and very open-ended. There's no end state involved. There's no piling on of information. There's no piece of data that we don't quite have yet. It is nothing like that. And I really center in on the shift in perspective. Like it's the lens that we're seeing through has become more clear, a little less fuzzy.
Yes,
A little less clouded by our belief systems or our attitudes or our behaviors. And in my life, when I think of, when did I become aware of transformational learning? I have to say that when I look back, all through childhood, we're going through transformations from one field of knowing to another field of knowing, one way of being to another way of being, from birth through all the way through each developmental age and stage of growth. We are transforming our way of knowing ourselves and the world. And I never looked at it like that before until I would say probably after maybe graduate school, where I learned the formal definition, but then I look back and say, wait a second, I've been going through transformations my entire life. And my internal architecture is changing entirely from one way of knowing to another way of knowing, each one encompassing the former, but yet expanding or becoming more complex or becoming more open and accepting as we grow. So when I look at that throughout childhood, I think, oh yes, transformation is a part of life. Where, it's not something we get to do when we're adults, or we get to do when we go to graduate school, or when we graduate from X institution. It's something we're doing all the time as we shift and change the ways that we perceive into new, open, more expanded ways of perceiving. So I love the fluidity of what you put forward, and that we're doing this all our lives.
I love that. And of course, you put it in such a beautiful way in terms of the developmental process, which I know is something very dear to you.
Yes.
And I think also I love that sense of where it's always happening. And in my work with complexity theory and quantum mechanics and things like that, the world is not static. It's always in movement. Yeah. So the very essence and fundamental aspects of nature itself are always shifting and changing and becoming something new and something with possibility. And I've tried to keep that in mind as kind of a model that transformation isn't something, some act. You can't make it happen. It's always occurring, but it's how we organize those changes and shifts and possibilities that relates it to our own personal lives and personal development. I don't know if you have something to add to that.
I think that's beautiful. And then so when in teaching and working with people, in helping them become aware of how this happens throughout childhood, one of the things I love the most is how adults change when we nurture children in their evolution, in their consciousness shifts, in their transformations throughout childhood, their way of knowing, the language they use, the way they perceive the world. And as we provide for them their developmental needs, we shift and change simultaneously, or at least we have the opportunity to. Not everybody goes willingly, as we know, but eventually the opportunity is always there, always presenting itself. Do we rise to the occasion?
Oh, I love that. And you're right. It's the opportunities are always presenting itself. I think that's a really, really important aspect. And I think for me, the process of transformation is most often emergent. You can't predict it necessarily. You can't force it. It's just always emerging and always creating itself. And I find that so exciting in the learning process. And I think processes that allow trust and love and that are created within an authentic community, in my experience, those are the environments where this emergent quality of transformation really flourishes. And so when we develop a community that's alive with joy and positive regard and true depth, it just seems to make such a difference in everyone, because transformation isn't just contained. It's we connect to everything and everyone around us.
Beautiful. I love that. You mentioned trust. Trust from my viewpoint is the pivotal point where we need to learn in childhood how to trust ourselves, because if we don't trust ourselves, it becomes very difficult to trust anybody else. And so the development and the organization of self-trust there's tremendous opportunities between the ages of 8 and 12, particularly as that becomes available and emerges into the innate capacity becomes available in childhood. And when we receive the right environments or communities of trust, children naturally learn how to trust themselves and how to trust others. Without that self-trust, it becomes very, very difficult to really hear what's, about something new, to really understand what the opportunity that's being presented to us, and really go from the known to the unknown to explore, because we trust ourselves so we can explore in safety.
That is so important. As a teacher educator over the years, I've noticed on so many occasions, far too many occasions, where the students are told, "Oh, just go for it, explore, discover, go for it," and then they say, "Oh, this is great," and they go for it, and then suddenly they're, "Oh no, you can't do this. Oh no, you did this. Oh no, you did this." The trust is gone.
That's right.
And the next time you ask them, "Oh, go explore, go discover."
That's right.
No, what do you want? Because I know that's what you're really going to do. And so that when the lack of trust is broken, the learning process also becomes broken. I think, just like you were saying.
It's hindered. It really is hindered. And to explore, when we're surrounded by rules and regulations, it's very difficult to experiment, because, as you said, the process is emergent.
Yes.
So in order to trust the emergence, we have to be open, and it has to be safe to shift and change. And if we're told, "Oh no, you can't go that direction, you have to only go in this direction in this particular way," then it becomes unsafe. So in order to reflect and make it personally our own, we need that safety of open exploration.
Yes, a friend, actually, in one of my books, a friend shared a story of a student. He's an art teacher, and he gave this very open-ended assignment, very challenging, and the student just dove into it. Ooh. And struggled through it. His struggle was visceral, and his questioning and inquiry was deep and just impressive. But in the end, his art project, I don't want to say failed, it didn't materialize like he wanted. And as an art project, it left a lot to be desired. So the student and the teacher said, "Well, that's okay. This is what happens when we really explore something, and you explored it through the artistic process. You inquired about these really difficult understandings through your art. So what did you learn? And that changed everything. Then the students said, oh, I learned this, and was able to just unload all of the things that were learned. And it was a beautiful, beautiful example of trust and saying you don't have to get it perfect to learn.
Well, that's a beautiful story. I love that story, because that self-observation, when the teacher is the guide, really, the teacher asks the right question. What did you learn? Whether it's a mistake or a success.
Right.
What did you learn about yourself in the process? And what did you learn about the process itself? And that the truth of the matter is we're always self-observing.
Yes.
But then somebody comes along and asks, I'm interested to know what it is you got from this experience. That question allows a person to self-reflect and say, oh, yeah, well, here's what I got from this experience. And then the whole thing unfolds as a success, because the point is self-observation, self-reflection, self-inquiry, and to move forward with that self-knowledge.
I think that's such an important part, because sometimes when we ask, what did you learn? It is just, well, I learned this and this and this and this. And then the follow-up question is, what did you learn about yourself?
Yeah.
And that, when you said self-knowledge, that really connected with me, because that is, when we're talking about transformation, is a shift in perspective.
Yes.
It's what did the learning do inside me? Donald Oliver used to call that sometimes ontological knowing.
Yes.
Knowing that changes your being and grounds you in a whole different set of perceptions and understanding.
That's right. That's right.
About yourself and the world.
And as we change, of course, we perceive a different world.
Yes.
You know, the child of 5 doesn't even see the same world as a child of 10, as the teenager of 15, as the 21-year-old. Our perception, the world didn't necessarily change, but our perception of the world changed tremendously. Yeah. And that means we transformed in the process of growth and evolution. And the beautiful thing is to as an educator, to call upon a person to self-reflect so that they can become self-aware of what expansion they're moving into. That gives them the opportunity to own it and to commit to the expanded awareness.
That's just really beautiful. And I know, Josette, that you live this.
Oh, thank you.
I've run into so many students who then say, do you know Josette Luvmour? And I said, yes. Oh, she's just the best. That course changed my life.
Oh my goodness.
They just that sense of growth and new perspectives is something I know that you just live. So I'm curious about the course that you're designing for this purpose, and what you how you see that as part of your value system. There's the sense of development and growth.
Well, there's so many ways I could answer that question, but thank you so much for making me aware of what students say about me. So I appreciate that.
They adore you.
That's so sweet. Well, I'm always developing, Ba and I are always developing new courses, but the course that we're offering through TLF has to do with laying out the foundations of what the child, how the evolution of consciousness through childhood, and what the child, how the child's field of knowing expands and becomes greater and greater, more complex and more complex as they grow through childhood. And as we, as adults, participate with children, what that growth or mutual development means for us. So that's our foundation course, is to just share that material. And it's not about fact-based learning, because that, we don't really need more facts. It's about becoming more conscious of what the evolution of consciousness is through childhood, and then the opportunities that become available to us. So that's the first level course that we're offering through TLF. And then the second level would be, now that we know this, what meaning do we make out of it? How do we utilize it? Not all of us had the greatest of childhoods where we got all of our needs met necessarily, or we weren't, when we were raising our children, we weren't perhaps as aware in the earlier years what they needed developmentally. So how do we go back, and not necessarily go back, but how do we go forward and remedy situations that might be out of balance? And bring that back into balance, taking into consideration the transformational process, the emergence, as you talk about, and the way of knowing self and the world that is available as we, expand into a greater sense of knowing. But I know too, Sam, that you also have a remarkable course in a spiritual connection to these basic understandings. I'd like to hear more about that from you.
Oh, that's a big topic as well. As you probably know, I founded a master's program at one time in holistic and integrative education, and it turned out to be a very successful program that sustained itself over about 20 years. And so that sense of looking at the world as dynamic, changing, transforming, but whole nonetheless, and interconnected and relational. Those were kind of the understandings that we're trying to put into place. I guess it was almost in some ways a merging of indigenous knowing and indigenous wisdom that's been there through the eons of time, and the new sciences, oddly enough, saying that the world is interconnected and relational, and that it's reflective of its parts. The parts are reflective of the whole, and the whole is reflective of the parts in this real beautiful dynamic. And for me, those were spiritual understandings. And so historically, just in terms of to wrap up the thing, your question is as we moved more and more into these areas and tried to apply them to teaching and the classroom and our understandings, we called the courses not courses but odysseys, and all of us were looking to see, what do these things mean? Where do they take us? What does it suggest about the way we teach young children or older children, or incarcerated children, or bilingual children, or special needs children, in whatever capacity it was? And the questions became more and more personal, and our students started to see spiritual qualities in these questions about who am I, and how do I live in the world, and how do I take who I am into the classroom in an authentic way. And so the more we focused on that, on our presencing in the classroom, we started focusing on these questions of meaning and ultimacy. And for us, anyone can give another person information.
Right.
But we can't give another person meaning.
That's right.
Meaning is internally constructed.
That's right.
And so how do you shift your understanding of what happens in the classroom to allow children and students and young people to create meaning and direction and applications that are important and significant to them. So we moved more and more into these questions of spirit and spirituality, and so that's even that's a long, short answer.
Yeah, the
I
nutshell
moved into
version.
it and we started incorporating.
That's beautiful. As I'm listening to you, I'm really hearing the importance of relationship. I'm hearing the importance of not only the teacher or the educator being willing to self-question, self-inquire, open to new ways of seeing themselves, but then really engaging and relating to the child and stepping into the child's worldview, not just always from the adult's perspective. I'm going to teach you the knowledge that I have that's going to give you the ability to pass this test. And that is not what the educational process that you're offering at all. You're saying this is about relationship. This is about relationship with yourself, first and foremost, and then stepping into the child's worldview so that you're really looking at what are this child's meaning structures? What is the family system that this child comes from? What is the opportunity in their way of perceiving? And how can we then expose them or give them an opportunity to expand out from there, I guess is the way I might consider saying is, do I have that right?
You really do. In fact, it's interesting. I just wrote a chapter, kind of reimagining or rethinking the history of our program, and it was built around relationship. And I actually divided relationship into 3 areas. They all intertwined, but at one level, it was that everything is relational. That there isn't anything that's separate and unto itself. There are no objects in the world. There's only subjects, and so I had a background in the neurosciences and trying to apply those understandings to education, and started to realize that the environment, how do we relate to the environment? How do we set up an environment that's conducive to learning, that calms us, that allows us to look at ourselves and the world at the same time? How do we incorporate music into that process? How do we incorporate nature? And so we started looking at the child as a whole person, and all of the elements that create our personhood, our humanity, and that those are elements to relate and bring together, to integrate and organize. And so just that part of it started to shift the way our teachers were teaching in classrooms. They actually became we had 6 teachers of the year in 10 classes. And so out of 10 small cohorts. And so it started to be getting attention from everyone else. But then there was another aspect of relationship. What about the relationship of the classroom itself, of the community? Building trust again.
That's right.
And so how do we interact and support and learn together and collaborate and cooperate and be there for one another? What are ways to do that? And so that relationship became interpersonal and communitarian, and where the teacher and students were all together as a community. And then the third aspect of relationship for us was more I guess you might say transpersonal relationships. What's our relationship to the outside world, to the cosmos, to our own, to who we are, and those deep questions and meanings in our lives? What drives us? What propels us forward like a magnet, and what's holding us back? And what are our passions and our dreams? It's like those two curricular questions. What kind of person do you want to be, and what kind of world do you want to live in? And those questions sort of framed the exploration. So that element of relationship was very prominent for us.
It's interesting that you describe the importance of creating a classroom environment so that the child feels safe and trusting. And one of the things that we work with educators in natural learning relationships is how to be in relationship to each of the different developmental fields of knowing of childhood. From the kindergarten years, that's going to be one kind of classroom environment, into the elementary years and the organization of feeling relationships with others, that's going to be creating another kind of classroom environment. And then the teen years, or actually the middle school years, and then the teen years, and then of course the college years. Each one of these fields of knowing requires a different relationship from the educator and a different set of nurturing environments that will surround the child so that what's innate or what our capacities are can come forward in safety. And there's that word trust again. The child must trust that the educator is on their side and that the environment is so safe that they can launch from that, that there, that there's enough, the ground is accepting, like you said, positive regard, unconditional positive regard. Carl Rogers had it so right. And all of that developmental nourishments that tell the whole child, the spiritual nature, the emotional nature, the physical nature, all of the aspects of self, that it's safe to go forward. It's safe to make a mistake. It's safe to learn from those mistakes. Nobody's going to tell you you're bad and wrong and give you a bad grade that's going to go on your report card, that's going to go to your parents, and then they're going to punish you. That is not safe. What we want to do is create that safety and change with the child as the child grows so that they can emerge out into the unknown and say, oh, this is open, this is different, never been here before, and approach it from wonder and awe, and not fear and, oh, I've never seen this before, that's so scary, I don't know if I could deal with this, and then shut it down. But open awe, oh, this is amazing, how interesting. Walk side by side with students like that. I think we're on the same page. We just, do it in different ways.
I know, it's beautiful. I so relate to what you just said about wonder and awe. And I looked up the definition of sacred, and the definition is to inspire awe and wonder.
I didn't know that. That's great.
It's one of the understandings, the early etymologies. And I thought all learning should be sacred from that perspective. Everybody can do that. There's nothing, even if you're in the most constricted teaching environment you can imagine, you can still inspire awe and wonder in who we are and what we're part of, and the cosmos itself.
Yes.
The mystery of it all. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate this conversation where it's just, I feel like we're bouncing ideas off of each other and just in a lot of simpatico.
Yes. Well, I wanted to shift a little bit because the course I'm going to be teaching is a little different from the frame that we've been discussing. And it comes out of some new interest of mine. And I'm hoping that there are people who are, it's not just interests, it's questions. And it's a course that's going to have spiritual activism in its title. And it almost sounds like a spiritual sometimes is seen as, inward, and activism outward. Where did those come together, and how do they come together? And so those are some of the questions I would like for us to explore. And in particular, I don't usually center any course around a book, but if those who can't take this course, I am going to be using a book called Emergent Strategy. And it's just a beautiful, it's by Adrienne Marie Brown. And it is built around trust and love. Very interesting because it goes right along with what we're talking about, and how to actually act in the world from that vantage point, from that commitment. And it's a practice. It's a practice that's very difficult, and it involves listening. It involves going into communities. And if we go into communities that are different from the ones we're a part of, trust has to be established. If you're going to be working, even if you have the best of intentions, trust and listening and humbling ourselves in a way in order to transform our own understandings and perspectives and perceptions, to allow other wisdoms to be a part of who we are and our understanding of the world. So I'm excited about trying it and interacting with a group of students around this. It seems like in the last few years, a lot of us are wondering, how do we act in the world in a way that's consistent with loving and kind and caring and trusting values? Are there ways to bring those forth in our educational settings, but also in our community settings and in our lives in general? So
I like what you said, that it sounds to me like you're saying go into a community, and the first thing we need to do is listen. Not go into a community to give or to change or to teach or to adjust or to deliver, but to go in and listen first and connect and learn, and then offer from what's within, as near as I can, if I'm interpreting what you're saying correctly, to act from your highest, what you might say, from your highest self, or from your highest knowing, or from your deepest authenticity.
Yes.
Yeah. But first you have to listen.
You have to listen. You have to build trust. And a lot of, I'm understanding more and more in my own life how much I still need to unlearn, how we get caught in our own automatic perceptions, our automatic reactions, we're automatic, and those happen quickly. And in neuroscience, the brain moves quickly along the understandings of transmitters, neural transmitters. But to slow down our reaction helps us unlearn that neuromodulation. And the interesting thing, what slows the brain down, what slows our reaction down, is love.
Is that so?
That is so.
Did not know that.
And so love itself is a neuromodulator. It slows us down just
of course, right?
Just long enough to say, ooh, watch, stop, rethink. And I mean, we could say when we fall in love, for instance, we start to hesitate being on automatic just a little bit, because you start to slow down your reaction time and just to consider the other person, to
This is
open it up.
perfect. This goes back to Goethe. We only
Yes.
learn from those we love.
Yes.
And it's the environment of acceptance or unconditional positive regard, or, creating an environment of acceptance where a child feels loved, that they can open to who they actually are. And that's what you're offering. I know that as adults, we have these neural pathways that we just run along automatic, and don't question a lot, especially if they've gotten us far in our lives. And we have to question in order
Yes.
to engage transformational learning.
And
We
I think
have to,
that's, yes. And certainly if we act in the world and we're still on automatic with the synapses are myelinated, which kind of like taking duct tape and connecting them together. And so that connection goes like this.
Yeah.
Well, your modulation and love, you start to unravel that duct tape. And so it takes time. It doesn't happen quickly. And because unlearning is it's a slower process. And I think that's why we feel like we're growing. We have to break through the soil and kind of, the warmth of the sun is there, and then stretch a little more, and then take that in, and a little more, and finally we can bear fruit. And I think that's that notion. It's a process for certain.
Lovely, lovely. Well, there's a course that we've been developing called Self-Reflective Collectivism, and that is about self-reflecting together.
Wow.
And it goes along with what you're saying, as near as I can tell, or at least maybe that's the meaning of the connection I'm seeing.
Yes.
Is going along with what you're saying. In the myelination, my understanding is it makes the neuroelectric, the electricity run faster.
Yes, absolutely. It connects because there's usually spaces there, and suddenly the myelination connects
them. So then to create new pathways, what we're doing is allowing those to die from attrition, maybe? Is that a fair way to say it? And then to create new pathways means we're myelinating new things altogether.
Yes, yes.
And I can see where it's a
That's
process.
why they go together, learning and unlearning. And I think that's so important what you just said, because it isn't just removing, it's also creating.
Yes.
I love how you
new pathways. So it's like well, in the brain processes we might call it pruning, but it sounds like it's a reorganization of energy. I mean, if we look at it as energy.
Yes.
Yes.
And
lovely. And you're going to do that in your classes.
I hope so. I hope that process happens.
Boy, who knows where it will go?
At least begins. And I always take a class as a challenge for myself, first of all, because I'm still learning and growing and faltering and missing the mark. But so it's I hope to create an environment where we learn together and share, and we can be vulnerable and trusting.
Yeah, those are the best classes, is to go in fresh and anew and curious about who we're with, and drawing everyone forth. That's what makes teaching fun, I think. Is
yes, it sure does. It is the most wonderful thing.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Sam. That was beautiful.
I loved having this conversation. It's really exciting.
Really sweet. Thank you so much.
Find out more about upcoming courses at our website, www.transformativedynamics.org.